Hello, everyone. I got it in my system to do a review of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Episode 3 because it was terrible. Very frustrating to watch. Now, I haven't done a review of the first episode. I didn't do a review of the second episode. I had my, exceptions to the second episode, but so far the series to this point has been a little slow, but I gave WandaVision a shot, and it did what it did. But this episode in particular was just so all over the place and so unsatisfying and very frustrating. And so I just thought I would go over it. And unlike some of my past reviews where I give sort of a general overview of my thoughts and things, I have the episode right in front of me, and I can sort of scan through the scenes and remind myself of where we were as we proceeded. So for those of you who have not seen the series yet, for those of you that don't want anything spoiled, I recommend, obviously, that you stop listening to this. But if you've seen the series so far, or you're curious about it, you may proceed with safety. But I am going to get very detailed. So we start out with a brief little recap of the previous episode's events, more or less. And I will not be giving an overarching, summary of the plot thus far because that would take forever. But for the sake of convenience, at the end of the last episode, Bucky and Sam decided that the best course of action in order to try to track down the super soldier serum using Flag Smasher group would be to go talk to Baron Zemo, who is apparently currently, or at the time, in prison in Germany, in a high-security, super-duper max security prison in Germany, which I believe you saw him at the end of Civil War, if you watched that movie. Because the theory is that Baron Zemo hates super-powered people. He blames super-powered people for all the problems, and most especially the destruction of his country, Sokovia, which happened in Age of Ultron. So he, conceivably, leading up to the events of Civil War, did a whole bunch of hunting down super soldiers, because that's made obvious by the time you get through Civil War. So he must know something that Sam and Bucky can't obtain themselves about finding who makes super soldier serum. Okay, a little bit janky, but all right, fine. So they go to the prison. Oh, sorry, I should start out by saying we start out with a fake advertisement for the Global Repatriation Council. This is the bureaucracy that was set up in order to help people merge back into society after they reappeared after the events of Endgame, and half the population of the planet all suddenly reappeared after 5 years of absence. What the GRC is going to have to do with the wider plot going forward, I don't know. I'm sure there's something insidious in there somewhere. Then we open up with a scene of the new Captain America, John Walker, and Battlestar, Lamar Hoskins. Or is it Hoskins or Hopkins? I forget off the top of my head. Anyway, they are raiding the safe house that the Flag Smashers were holing up in at the end of the last episode, but they've already departed at this point. And we see for the first time John Walker act like a not nice guy. He lets his anger get the best of him. And so you get to see a little shade of what separates him from Steve Rogers and how he, as in the comic books, will eventually go nuts and do something crazy and definitely non-Captain America-like. It's a brief little scene, more or less, just to establish that the Flag Smashers have moved on and Walker and Battlestar are still on the case, more or less. And again, hinting at some character evolution for Walker. Not a bad scene, I guess. It was all right. Then we jump over to Bucky and Sam in the super duper max prison, where, again, Sam and Bucky are operating effectively off the books here, but apparently they can just walk into some super duper super villain super max prison and get a moment or two or an interview with a criminal who blew up the UN. He's effectively sort of like the international Timothy McVeigh, but okay, you can go get an interview with him just because I guess you're you or something. I don't know. But Bucky wants to talk to him alone. He wants to talk to him alone. This is something he has to do. And so he walks in there and they start exchanging pleasantries, I guess. And Bucky says, somebody's making new super soldier serum. I can help you. Okay. And then that scene kind of ends. And then suddenly Bucky and Sam are in a garage somewhere. I'm assuming still in Germany or Berlin or Munich, or wherever we are. And we're suddenly blessed with the information that Bucky has suggested to Sam off camera that they break Zemo out of jail in order to get his help to track down whoever's making the super soldier serum. Okay, and of course Sam doesn't think this is a good idea. But then we're subjected to a little montage as Bucky recites a hypothetical about how you would break somebody out of this prison. And we get this montage of events taking place at the Supermax, Supervillain, Super Duper German prison, where in short order, Bucky is somehow in general population. I don't know how. He drops off a message to some random prisoner that says, he is going to kill you tonight. The random prisoner is playing chess with another guy who I guess Bucky somehow knew he had a rivalry with ahead of time. And so the prisoner who gets the note that is so obviously dropped in front of him that apparently nobody else notices, decides to then punch his chess partner. And this leads to a giant riot in the prison for some reason. And again, Bucky is narrating all these events to us sort of like after the fact, in retrospect. And Sam just thinks it's a plan, but we're seeing the events as they happen, as though it's some sort of shock that it's happening prior to them meeting in this garage. How Bucky found the time to do all this, plan all this, I don't know. But in the course of things, he also gets a pass card to Zemo that Zemo is then able to use to break out of the prison somehow as the riot is going off, and get a uniform of a prison guard, and just walk out and on and on and on. And then all of a sudden Sam's like, that's a crazy idea. And then Zemo walks in because of all this happened, of course, previously in the day. Bucky's just talking about sort of abstractly. Okay. Somehow that happened and went perfectly without any other assistance or anything else. So, yeah. Okay, now Zemo is on the team. Okay, so then Zemo takes the three of them to some garage that apparently his family owns in Berlin that has a whole bunch of classic cars, because now we're told, for the first time, I think, since Civil War, that Zemo is a baron. He descends from royalty, aristocracy of Sokovia, and his family was wealthy. Okay, so that's good to know. And they go to the classic cars to get, I don't know, Zemo's gear or something. They don't actually take any of the cars. It's just he goes there to get like a gun and a bag. But most significantly, and seemingly the only reason why the scene is there, is that Zemo's signature purple ribbed mask is on the car seat. And he grabs this mask like it's some secret or something. He's never worn it before. We don't know what its significance is, if it has any, but he grabs it and puts it in the case, the little suitcase, as though it's something he has to keep hidden. I don't know why. It's never established why. Maybe it will down the line, but we'll get to that as things proceed. So anyway, they then get on Zemo's private jet because, of course, you know, he's royalty as a private jet. He can go to an airport even though he's a world-famous terrorist, and somehow they just move through society and nobody notices. Plus, you know, Sam is an Avenger, and Bucky is a previously suspected terrorist who blew up the UN in Civil War, but was eventually shown to have been framed and then pardoned for his, you know, other crimes and other things that he committed as the Winter Soldier. Mentioning that is also going to become relevant here pretty soon as well in the course of the logic of events of this show. Anyway, they go on the plane, they have some banter, trying to establish some sort of, you know, character with each other. And we have another one of those moments where Sam and Bucky have a moment of contention. We have to play out this notion that Sam and Bucky have some sort of constant conflict, rivalry. Bucky is sore at Sam for having given up the shield. Okay, makes sense. There's a lot going on there. But we have to have these tiny little instances where they're fighting, they're arguing, they're bickering with each other. And on the plane, it has to do with whether or not Bucky likes Trouble Man, the Marvin Gaye album. So it's another little childish little spat, I suppose. And we see a lot of these both in this episode and in previous instances, because we have to keep up this notion that they have a conflict, this rivalry, this constant butting of heads all the time. And if it was just Sam gave up the shield and that was a bad idea, that might be okay, but it becomes, juvenile, just like in the first episode where they're staring contests and all that fun stuff. Then we jump to somewhere in Eastern Europe. I think it's Latvia. And we're reminded that there's another bad guy in this show, and that is Carly Morgenthau, the gender-swapped Carl Morgenthau from the comic books, who was Flag Smasher. He was just the Flag Smasher. He wasn't the leader of an organization necessarily. Anyway, we're reminded that she exists because the whole Flag Smasher thing constantly seems peripheral to everything, even though they're supposed to be the main villains. All we've seen them do so far is hide and talk sort of abstractly about their motives. Like they want to return everything to before the blip, as in before everybody came back, when the nations were all unified and everything. And I'm forced to have to think of what the world would have been like if half the population of the planet just suddenly disappeared and 5 years went by. I would imagine, and I know this is comic book logic, that there wouldn't have been a unified world. There would have been absolute chaos and anarchy. So yeah, that's the one sort of overarching that doesn't make any sense that I've had ever since the Endgame, is doesn't make any sense to me that people would be so civil that things would still be operating in any way, shape, or form that would be recognized 5 years after the fact. But anyway, so we're introduced back to the Flag Smashers, and we find out all of a sudden that Carly has a family member, I think it's her mother, who is convalescing as a result of disease, I suppose. I don't know if it's ever specified, but either way, I think it was tuberculosis they eventually mentioned. Anyway, so she's convalescing and dying in this hospice somewhere. And I'm caused to ask again, why should I care about Carly Morgenthau? What is sympathetic about Carly Morgenthau? She has a dying family member, okay, but we've seen her commit terrible acts of terrorism, and her motivations don't make any sense to me because they haven't spent a whole lot of time telling us what exactly it is, right? Oh, they want to destroy nations. They want to take away the borders. They want things to go back to the way they were before the snap or the blip where everybody came back. Okay, and you're going to achieve this by what? I'm still not sure why or how they think their actions are going to lead to the outcomes that they want. I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, they're all super powered because they got the super soldier serum, but how what they're doing is going to do that. And you could say, well, they're just crazy terrorists. They don't know what they're doing. Okay, I guess. But there's got to be some logic there. And to introduce a character that has a dying relative, am I supposed to feel sympathy for this person? Because I don't. And the scene is so quick. It's so fast. That's one of the things in this episode in particular. We go from scene to scene to scene to scene. And you don't have any time to process what's going on before we're in the next thing. So anyway, she's got a dying mom. Okay. Then we're in Madripoor. Okay, Madripoor is a storied location in the Marvel comic book universe. It's not a real country, but it acts as sort of I don't know what you want to call it, sort of like the pirate cove of the Marvel universe, a country that is just, crime ridden, and it's all sort of no extradition, and it's where all the criminals go and all this shady stuff happens. Think of like Las Vegas back in the 50s or something. If Las Vegas was a country unto itself, where there was a law, there were organizations, there was a kind of society, but it was all very, saloon, lawless, a little on the edge of civilization, that kind of thing. Except Madripoor in this instance is shown us to be as Cyberpunk 2077 city. I mean, I guess that's kind of cool, but you got these gigantic, skyscrapers with neon all on the edges, and then you have like the dirty underbelly of it all. So it looks really cool. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but what are you going to do? Thank you, tall person. Hoy, have to work, so I can't watch live. We'll watch in full later. Happy National Peanut Butter and Jelly Day. It's peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly and a baseball bat. Okay, I had to get that out of my system. Anyway, so we're in Madripoor, where I guess Zemo says they need to go to make contact with people he knows who would know who's making the super soldier serum. Somebody named Selby in Madripoor. Okay, and in order to do this, suddenly our three characters, Zemo, Winter Soldier, and the Falcon, are on a bridge to Madripoor. They're just walking along a mile-long, 2-mile-long bridge. I don't know. It looks like something, Golden Gate-esque bridge. They're just and there's no traffic on this bridge, right? A main bridge from wherever to Madripoor, no traffic, but they're just walking along the bridge. And Sam is dressed up, as they say in the show, like a pimp. He's supposed to be undercover as someone called the Smiling Tiger, and he's wearing this crazy outfit or whatever. Zemo is himself, and Bucky is supposedly posing as the Winter Soldier. This is problematic, and I use that word very sparingly, but it's problematic for many reasons. We'll get to that momentarily. Anyway, so Sam is dressed up as some well-known underworld figure called the Smiling Tiger. Why? What role does that play at any point in the episode? What function does it serve in the course of their interactions? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's empty. No red snapper weaver. Okay? It has nothing to do with anything except, I guess, just to give him something to do or to give him a cool outfit for a second or a kooky outfit and then make comments about it. It never serves any purpose except to show later. I guess the only utility it has is when we have a sudden revelation that these guys are lying. We'll get there momentarily, but it was obvious. Anyway, so they walk down the bridge, empty bridge, no traffic, until a car picks them up in the middle of the bridge. I guess it's Zemo's magical, my wealth and royalty gets me cars to show up in the middle of a bridge somewhere just for the sake of things happening. Anyway, they drive into town and they go to a nightclub. Your standard sort of nightclub. And everybody's looking at them and everybody knows who the Winter Soldier is. Zemo addresses Bucky as, whatever, and I've forgotten my German, but, et cetera, Soldat. So everybody's like, oh, it's the Winter Soldier. Now, back up a couple of movies. We were told very specifically that the Winter Soldier, as both a title and an entity, was a myth. A myth in espionage circles for assassinations for decades going back to the 50s, said Black Widow back in Civil War. All right? Oh, sorry, Captain America Winter Soldier. I apologize. Okay. But walking into Madripoor, simply the name Winter Soldier, everybody knows who he is, recognizes him on sight. Even comments on the length of his hair has changed. Okay. Yeah, all right. But setting that aside, again, Bucky Barnes, best friend of Captain America, framed for blowing up the UN and eventually exonerated of that crime, pardoned for not only, other things he committed, but also the crimes he committed as Winter Soldier. None of this is common public knowledge. The sight of Zemo in public is not a red flag to people. Sam Wilson, the Falcon, with no other makeup or disguise on, is not recognized, given that he's an Avenger. One of the greatest handicaps to some of these shows is the fact that at this point in the timeline of things, all of these characters should be, to some extent, world famous. And yet we're to believe they just walk into a, seedy bar and no one understands or knows the context of who they are, why it's weird that they're there. They shouldn't be suspicious immediately of what's going on. Really? It is a big hurdle to get over as a writer. I get it. But it certainly doesn't do you any favors when it makes absolutely no sense. Thank you, X Bubba Hotep. This seems like confirmation of me thinking the MCU was done after Endgame, technically Infinity War. This is confirmation that Marvel still has a big problem with making television shows. Save for Daredevil season 1, and you can extend a little bit to season 2 and season 3 because Daredevil was the best of the bunch. Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage to a somewhat lesser extent, at least for season 1. They don't know how to structure TV. They try to do too much. They do one of two things. They either try to do too much in too small a time frame, like with what it seems like they're doing with Winter Soldier here, or they try to do take a very small amount of plot and stretch it out over too many episodes, which is what happened in the Netflix series. Nearly all of them, except for the first season of Daredevil. And that's the major point here. I mean, there is a way to do this show if you want to do it concisely and compact and everything. But they only gave them 6 episodes to operate with. When in this case, as far as I can tell, it's kind of the reverse of Netflix. If they'd given them 9 episodes, maybe, sort of like WandaVision, given them some more room to breathe and let some of these plots, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Incubate, maybe a better word for it, than just going from scene to scene to scene to scene and giving us no time to sort of understand what's going on or why. It might have been better for this show. But anyway, so they're in a bar and we have a meaningless sort of silly scene where like Sam is just accepted, I guess, as who he's supposed to be. And the bartender says, "Do you want the regular?" And Sam's like, he just nods because does Sam know what this guy is supposed to sound like? Does he have an accent? Was Sam given any other information about this guy and how his mannerisms or what he should know aside from just dressing up like him? No. So again, what purpose does this serve? Well, we'll get there, but it's really thin. Anyway, so the bartender then gives him some crazy, drink where he has to cut open a snake and I guess take out like, I don't know, snake's liver or something, or I don't know, put it into a drink and he drinks it. And like, and he has to hesitate while drinking because that's gross or something. Like, okay. And so Zemo's asking for Selby, whoever Selby is. And I don't know if this is an established character in the Marvel Universe. And I guess they have to prove their bona fides. Like he really is the Winter Soldier or he really is Zemo or something. Because everybody's looking at, they're like the center of attention in the whole bar. And then he, I guess, has to prove to people that he is who he is by commanding the Winter Soldier to attack. So then the Winter Soldier, Bucky, just starts plowing through people with his metal arm and beating the crap out of everybody, which is kind of a fun little fight scene to watch, but it's also like, this is so over the top and weird and in some seedy bar where you're trying to keep a low profile or try to pass yourself off as some kind of, criminal scum or something. It's a bit loud and ostentatious, don't you think? It's going to get a little bit of attention, like maybe unwanted attention. I'd kind of been hoping as this was starting that we'd see some other supervillains in this bar, like maybe minor characters from some of the other movies or just like Easter eggs of things. If there were any in the background, I didn't spot any, but like supervillain bars of one sort or another are kind of a trope in comic books, where the bad guys hang out when they're not committing crimes. I was hoping to see some more of those guys there, but we didn't. Thank you to Gay Rascal. Look what they did with Agent Carter in 8 episodes per season. It was amazing and then got canceled. I liked Agent Carter. But then network television, ABC itself, had some experience with making TV shows. And like I say, Agent Carter, it was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. It was all right. It was entertaining. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got better over time. But Marvel has had the hardest time making television shows that really stand up. They either pick showrunners and writers that don't know what they're doing or don't have an appreciation for the material. I don't know. Again, Daredevil season 1 being the exception. But the structure of this episode is what really threw me off. Anyway, so they beat up people, and then suddenly they're allowed in the back room to meet Selby, some lady who Zemo knows, and she knows him, and she has some information about where the super soldier serum can be found or whatever, who's making it, because this super secret thing, everybody just seems to know about it. And she's so well versed in the underworld that she looks at Sam and doesn't suspect that he's not who he says he is for some reason. Anyway, so she just rattles out information to us. And that's one of the biggest problems with this show, this particular episode. Every piece of exposition is just rapid fire, machine gun shot at us. We don't have much time to sort of digest it. We're also given a whole bunch of like backstory for movies that you may not have seen. They talk in summary at places about what happened in Civil War and such. It's a little awkward, a little ham-fisted, but I guess what are you going to do? Anyway, so they talk to Selby, they get the information out of Selby, and all of a sudden, Sam gets a phone call on his phone, and it's his sister. Because, you know, guys who have any experience going undercover or doing military operations or stuff, they keep their cell phones, their personal cell phones on them at all times and have them on. Yeah, Non-Vitae Rex, thanks so much. If they recognize him as Winter Soldier, why would anyone in their right mind try to fight him? Well, that's the other thing, too. You know, if they actually think he's the Winter Soldier, and even if you don't think he's the Winter Soldier, let's just say that you know him as, he's got a bionic metal arm, and he's world famous as a terrorist or something, and he's the bodyguard of this guy. Do you really want to pick on this guy? It just didn't, none of it made any sense. The logic just didn't go anywhere. Anyway, so Sam's phone rings, and it's his sister calling, because remember, Sam has a real life back in the States. We had that established in the first episode, you know, trying to humanize him. I kind of liked the first episode because it gave us a little more depth to these two characters beyond just being superheroes. The first episode was decent-ish. Second episode had problems, but that's a different thing. Anyway, so the sister calls up because she needs to talk to Sam. And why Sam answers the phone? Well, because Selby tells him to. Answer it. Put it on speaker. Okay. Again, this is the only reason Sam was quote-unquote incognito, to have this moment of they aren't who they say they are. It's a trap or something, you know, because of course his sister doesn't know what's going on. He talks to her trying to play it off like this is someone he knows. And it's obvious that he doesn't belong there and on and on. It's painful. All right. And she eventually gives away the fact that he's Sam. Like, Sam, who's Sam? And then they start pulling out their guns. But all of a sudden, Selby's shot and killed from behind a window by someone. Who is this someone? We'll find out momentarily. Anyway, so then a fight ensues. Everybody gets shot or beat up, and they escape. Only to find out in the alley as they run away. First off, a bounty has been placed on their heads. I think it was like $1,000 in Bitcoin. All right, because the power broker, the mysterious person behind the super soldier serum, is now after them. You know, he's the bad guy, and he wants to get them down. Never mind the flag smashers who got their powers from the power broker, but the power broker himself or itself or herself, whatever they decide to make it, wants them dead. So now there's a bounty on their heads after Selby dies immediately. Like, how did they know to put a bounty on their heads? I don't know. Anyway, they run out into the alley, and all of a sudden, who comes out of the shadows but Sharon Carter, Agent 13, who we haven't seen since Civil War. Remember her? Remember, she's on the run and has been on the run because she stole Cap's shield from S.H.I.E.L.D. to give to Cap during Civil War, after he was on the run at the end of the events of Winter Soldier. How she stole the shield, we don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter, but because she stole the shield, she's been on the run from the government forever. Okay. And I guess she assassinated this Selby character for them because, okay. And also, she's been living in Madripoor this whole time, apparently leveraging her S.H.I.E.L.D. agent skills to become some kind of minor art mogul holding real copies of paintings at her palatial estate where they go to after this. And she has like security guards, guys in black suits with earpieces all over her estate, protecting the art, I guess. Obviously not protecting her, because she just goes gallivanting off into the depths of the town without any backup in her hoodie to assassinate people. If it was her that assassinated Selby, I'm assuming it was, but I don't know. Anyway, so she takes them back to her super duper criminal fortress that she's built up over the last several years, having gone rogue. Because in the midst of the snap and the blip and everything that's happened and on and on and on, she couldn't get a pardon. She never contacted anyone in that whole time back at S.H.I.E.L.D. or Fury or anybody, etc. Like, okay, all right. Anyway, so now she's some minor crime figure in Madripoor. And so she knew that Sam and Bucky would be at that bar at that time, because why? I don't know. But she was there before they were, so I guess. And this is one of my other major complaints about this episode: the convenient arrivals and appearances of people at places where they couldn't possibly know where other characters were going to be. Just magic. So she was there at the bar the same time they decided to show up to look for this Selby girl lady who is now dead. But she gave them enough information, or Sharon then had the information they needed to try to track down who's making the super soldier serum. Okay, so in order to get her help, which she has already given by acting as a guardian angel for these guys when they showed up in a country that they shouldn't have shown up in. They probably didn't have any records or any forenotice that they were going to be there, but she knew that they were going to show up at that bar at that time of night, etc. She's already helped them escape from the power broker or whoever. But now she needs to be convinced to help them further. So Sam says, I will get you a pardon and you can come back to America and see your family again. Because Carter, Agent 13 didn't have any resources to try to get herself back into the good graces of the rest of the world all this time, somehow. But she's able to build up her own illegal art house dealing thing in a foreign country. Okay. All right. Anyway, so now she's going to help them by trying to get information for them about the super soldier serum. And she gets information that leads them to a shipping dock, giant shipping crates, very, very cheap production value for fight scenes and stuff. And so they go to this place looking for a secret shipping container that has a secret entrance to a secret lab where one guy is working by himself in a super duper lab without any lab coat on, all unshaven and in a trench coat kind of thing. And he's working on, I guess, the super soldier serum. And so Sam and Bucky are in the super secret bunker with Zemo. And so they're interrogating this guy who is a minor character from the comic books, a very minor character, Wilfred Nagel, I think it was. Anyway, so Nagel gives them chapter and verse about how he was able to crack the code and he was able to recreate the super soldier serum by isolating the elements from the blood of some donor who had elements and traces in it. And of course, this is referring back to Isaiah Bradley from this previous episode, the Black Captain America, as it were. Now, in the meantime, Sharon is just sort of hanging out outside of the cargo container out in the dock. And all of a sudden, a team of super armed assassins show up. I'm assuming they're out for the bounty the power broker put on them. But again, magically, they know where to go. Even though Bucky and Sam and Sharon had to grill people to find out the information about where the super soldier serum is, suddenly these guys are there. So now, are they the power broker's men there? Because the power broker knows where they're headed? And if the power broker knew where they were headed, if he knew where the lab was that was producing the super soldier serum, why didn't he have that place cleared out the night before? Because it's daytime when this is happening, when he set the bounty on them in the first place. why did he give them a day's lead time to get to the super secret lab that he certainly knew about because he was funding it and put it under threat? And why was it not guarded? And on and on and on. Okay, so anyway, so Sharon is now outside by herself with these, super armed attack team guys. And she starts at first beating up guys with a baton, a sort of, telescopic baton thing. And I'm immediately taken back to Daredevil season 1. In fact, I think the first episode where Daredevil is fighting a bunch of guys with batons amongst a bunch of cargo crates. Every time I see a baton fight amongst cargo crates now, or cargo shipping containers, I think of Daredevil season 1. Anyway, she's all by herself out there, just kicking ass left, right, and center, doing, Black Widow kind of stuff and everything. And she's a trained SHIELD agent, so okay, fine, whatever. At least there's a point at which in the fights, several fights that she has, where she's overwhelmed by one of the bad guys. Like, he actually picks her up and slams her against one of the containers and actually has it over on her. But then we immediately and conveniently cut back to the secret lab where Sam and Bucky and them are interrogating the doctor. And then we cut back to Sharon and suddenly has him on the ground in a lock, sort of like a UFC kind of lock on the ground. Like, somehow she went from being overwhelmed by this guy to just having it over on him. A very convenient sort of action moment. Anyway, all this is going on without Bucky and Sam and Zemo hearing any of it, of course, or Sharon radioing to them that there's danger. She made a point of giving them like little earbud pieces to keep them in contact as this was all going on. But at no point does she radio them and say, hey, we're under attack. Interesting. Anyway, so then the doctor is telling them how, he cracked the code and he knows how to do it and yada yada. And Zemo just kind of casually is running his hands underneath the table on one side. Now remember, this is the super secret super soldier serum lab that nobody knew about, that nobody's been in before, but somehow Zemo just suspects, I guess, that there's going to be a hidden firearm under one of these tables. How he would know this, how he would have any idea to look for this, don't know. But magically, he finds a gun. And then he shoots the scientist. Because, of course, Zemo's goal is to eliminate superpowered beings. So if he kills the guy that knows how to make the super soldier serum, conceivably, that all stops. And maybe he thinks that's what he's going to do, except that there is zero chance that this guy has not recorded his findings somewhere, that the power broker does not own the recipe at this point. So killing the scientist seems awfully superfluous and meaningless. It's even more meaningless when, just as that happens, the bad guys outside fire an RPG at the lab. So now, if these guys work for the power broker, and I can only assume one or two things. Either they work for the power broker or they are going for the bounty on the people the power broker has put the bounty on. A guy with a rocket launcher shoots at the secret lab. So the power broker either A, doesn't care about the secret lab he set up and funded in order to make super soldier serum, or the scientist that knows how to make it, right? Or the power broker already has the recipe and it doesn't need the lab anymore, so he's fine with it being blown up. Or if they're not the power broker's men and they are the guys looking to get the bounty, how the hell are they going to get the bounty if they've incinerated the targets? I mean, I didn't see the bounty say dead or alive. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But either way, with the rocket going off, the lab exploded, the doctor would have died anyway. And miraculously, as the lab blows up and we see the shipping container flip over and everything, Sam, Bucky, and Zemo... Well, Zemo escapes in the chaos, and Sharon came down at the last second before the lab blew up. But the three of them, Sharon, Bucky, and Sam, emerge from this thing unscathed. Nothing, not even ripped clothing, just unscathed. Nothing. I know, superhero show, but part of the thing that's supposed to make Sam and Sharon Carter especially a little separate from these guys, they don't have any superpowers. They're just people. There's regular people. If Bucky comes out of it none the worse for wear, fine. But, Sam and Carter not. Anyway, so Zemo, again, used the chaos of the moment and the attack to escape. But he escapes to do what? Well, he escapes to put on his purple ribbed mask, pick up the gun that he has, and then attack and blow away the remaining attackers, and then pull around at the last second with a classic car that he pulled out of his ass so they can get away. And then Sharon says, I'll meet up with you guys later. You guys go, whatever else. Get me that pardon. I'm going this direction. Okay. I know. And Zemo puts on the mask only long enough to shoot the bad guys, and then he takes it off again. And also long enough for him to be seen by the guys with the mask on, which they never ask about. Of course. Of course. So then Sharon just, I guess, walks off back to her crime syndicate thing after almost being killed and also having killed several. I mean, I'll give the show this. It's not watering down the actual violence or the actual people are being killed. Most of the Marvel movies, it's a rare day where someone's actually, on screen murdered by one of the heroes. But in this instance, oh yeah, these guys are stabbed, shot, whole 9 yards. Anyway, so Zemo, who just murdered the professor, is now driving these guys off. And the most that Sam says is, when this is over, you're going back to prison. Like, well, what kind of threat is that? Really? That's the most you can do? Also, in the course of this, Sam and Bucky had another little spat about who was going to go right or left or something in the course of them fighting back against the bad guys before they escaped. It was another childish, tacked on, completely ridiculous moment where we have to be reminded that these two have some friction against each other for reasons. I don't know why at this point they can't just be friends. Grudging friends, but friends all the same. Why do we have to keep having these high school spats? I don't know. Anyway, so in the course of all of this, they discovered the identity or the existence of Carly Morgenthau's dead mother or sick mother or something. And so now they know they're going to go to this place in Latvia to try to find Carly Morgenthau, because I guess that's what they have to do next. Not try to stop the power broker, the person who's actually responsible for creating the super soldiers. No, they're going to leave Madripoor, where the power broker is, I think, and go to Latvia to keep chasing Morgenthau. Okay, and apparently the information about Morgenthau and her family was not completely restricted from them to this point. But okay, so now they go off to Latvia, where Morgenthau may or may not be, but, surprisingly enough, she is. And then we have a scene with her and I guess one of her compatriots in the Flag Smashers. The names of these people, I don't remember. We see them for 3 seconds. We don't have any time to establish who they are, what they have to do with anything. But they have a character building scene where they start talking about their motives and what they're doing and why they're doing this and kind of thing. And none of it latches to me. Just after everything else that's happened, after all the nonsense, it's very difficult to then suddenly get invested in these two characters, one of which I don't think I've ever seen before, or if I have, it was in fleeting, passing moments in scenes from 1 or 2 episodes back. And they keep trying to make her a sympathetic character, I think. I mean, I don't know why. Nothing about her situation, nothing about anything that she's done has made her a sympathetic character. I'm not on her side. I don't understand her argument. It's a failure of world building, and it's a failure of characterization. And it's also because we've spent no time with the bad guys, the Flag Smashers, to have any idea of what their philosophy is. They just keep repeating, either them or, Sam and Bucky. They want to return things back before the blip. where everybody was gone. Half the population was gone. I guess one of the problems is that we haven't been given a real explanation of what was the state of the world when half of the population was gone. What is the, normal that they want to return things to? And how does that even operate? Anyway, so then we were reminded that John Walker and Battlestar exist because they're always, 17 steps behind these guys. Suddenly we have a scene where they're at the prison that Zemo escaped from. Days or a week earlier, I don't know how much time has passed. Because it seems like they go from Berlin to the airport to Madripoor, say they're a day, turn around and go to Latvia. So I guess all of a day or two has passed between the prison break and this scene, I guess. I don't know how long it takes to fly from Berlin to Southeast Asia, Madripoor, if Madripoor is located in Southeast Asia like it is in the comic books. It seems to me that a lot of time should have been passing between these things, but only now Walker's showing up at this prison. And so him and Battlestar start trying to figure out how, would Sam and Bucky help this guy break out of the prison? Yeah, they would. Okay. Just remind us that these characters exist, I guess. Anyway, we have another plane scene with Bucky and Sam and Zemo. And then we have another scene of the Flag Smashers raiding a GRC, Global Reparation Council, storehouse or something. I guess they think by taking the supplies from these little outposts of this global organization, they're going to do some major damage somehow, I guess. Anyway, they leave the people who are in that warehouse or whatever tied up. And then as they're walking out, the whole place blows up. And her friend, partner in crime, didn't know that was going to happen, I guess. Somehow she set enough explosives in the building to blow it sky high, and he just didn't notice. And he looks at her, he says, there were still people in there. And she's like, this is what has to be done or whatever. I'm like, wait, do you know that you're part of a terrorist organization? Were you not aware of the previous actions taken by these guys that you're a member of, wearing a mask for, beating people up, and so on and so forth? You're surprised by this? I guess. And so Carly and her friend, whatever, love interest, I don't know, they drive off. Okay. And then in the final scene, Bucky, Sam, and Zemo have arrived in Latvia to try to, I guess, track down the family member that has apparently either died or is soon to die. I forget which. And then pick up the trail to where Carly went from there. Okay. Well, Bucky is distracted. He's going to go for a walk. So Sam and Zemo just kind of leave him be, I guess. And then Bucky picks up a steel ball with a symbol on it next to a tree on the street. And then he kind of wanders around. Then he finds another steel ball, or hell, it could be vibranium. That'll make sense in a minute, with these symbols on them or whatever. And then he goes out into an alley and he's like, I know you're here or whatever. And we turn and I forget her name. I know she's been in 3 or 4 movies now. I forget her name. As far as I can tell, it is the bald lady, Black Panther's #1 security chief lady. She's there. Another convenient arrival. So somehow she knew that Bucky and Sam and Zemo were going to go to that building at that corner at that time to leave a breadcrumb for only Bucky to see and recognize, and then a second breadcrumb down the street to see and recognize, so he'd go down a particular alley so he'd know who it was that was tracking them. Because everybody knows where they're going before they do in this show. Now, presumably, and I say presumably, she is there because Zemo is the one that killed King T'Chaka in Civil War, and she still wants revenge. That's my assumption, but then the episode ends. the transition from scene to scene in here is so jarring, so sudden. Your brain is not given any time to sort of digest what you've been told or what you've seen. There are scenes that are completely unnecessary. There's like this buffer scene of them going to a nightclub. Nothing happens in this scene. It's just that they go to a nightclub before they go off to the shipping container thing the next morning. There's no purpose to it. Nothing happens. The story isn't moved forward by it. It's just there. And information is rattled off so fast. Everything is just laid out so quickly. You don't have any time to like really settle in with what's going on. Characters come and go, people are killed, things blow up. And the most frustrating thing is everybody seems to know where everybody's going before they even know when they get there beforehand. A convenient arrival, one after the other, after the other, after the other. So that was episode 3 of a 6-part series. First episode, I kind of liked. You know, they stole some camera angles from Mr. Robot in places. It's kind of obvious. But it was a slow burn. It was a character builder. All right. Second episode, establishing John Walker. I kind of liked that stuff. It was all right. My major contentions with the second episode were the weird... well, first off, the introduction of Isaiah Bradley was really awkward. Like, it was not a very flattering, I guess, introduction. Also kind of didn't make any sense. They're looking for whoever is supplying the Flag Smashers with super soldier serum. And so they go to a guy who is A, elderly, B, was in prison for 30 years, and C, has had nothing to do with the rest of the world since then, seemingly. And somehow he's going to know who to go to find out about a modern problem. That didn't make any sense. Then there was the awkward scene after that where the police show up when Bucky and Sam are having another one of their high school spats in the middle of the street. And the police act like white people security by asking Bucky, "Is this guy bothering you, sir?" And I was like, what? It was the most ham-fisted, awkward, out of place, inappropriate, racial police / political social commentary ever. It just didn't belong. Had nothing to do with anything. It was so nonsense. And that's kind of how this show is geared, I guess. So yeah, we're halfway through the season. And this is the halfway point where everything and the kitchen sink is dumped into an hour worth of television. Nonsensical scene transitions, nonsensical continuity of story, rapid fire information that has no time to settle in your mind, events that make absolutely no sense. I mean, for a show that was trying to bring itself off as very grounded in the first episode, this episode showed all the bad things about superhero television shows from Marvel thus far. Looking back at Jessica Jones and Iron Fist, it was garbage. You know, I didn't have anything to say much about the second episode except for that one complaint. First episode I thought was fine. This one was an absolute train wreck. Absolute train wreck. So I'm hoping that the future episodes are better. I'm hoping we get over this hump because I really do want this stuff to be good. I am a Marvel fan. I don't want there to be bad Marvel shows. You know, I'm fine if there are, because even when I was reading Star Wars Expanded Universe books, there was the occasional bad Star Wars book, right? But it was still Star Wars, and I still had a love for the franchise and for the world. So, you know, you love it warts and all sometimes. That doesn't mean I have to enjoy a really cruddy episode. Because I was really hoping, I was like, Disney Plus, please just don't be Netflix 2 with Marvel TV shows. But this episode has taken me back to my Jessica Jones days. Oh boy. And if you'd like to hear more about my opinions on Netflix shows about Marvel stuff, you can find those on my playlist of reviews, where this one is going to go right after I finish up here. But everyone, for those of you that join me, and listened in, thank you so much for coming and listening to me rant. Moderators, those of you that are here, thanks for keeping an eye on things just in case anything happened. But, everyone's so well behaved, that's rarely a problem. Everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I really appreciate it for this impromptu little stream. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find the both of us tonight on Satsu 2 Cents' channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories that you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Share your thoughts about this episode with me in the comments section below. I'd be curious to know what you think, or if you spotted any Easter eggs or anything like that. And I can't promise that I'll do a follow-up review for the next episode, but depending on how it goes, you never know. I just might get inspired. Everyone have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.